Picture this: a man sits alone at a coffee shop, no phone in his hand, no desperate glances around the room, just him, a pair of earbuds, and an audiobook about philosophy playing softly in his ears. The world around him spins in a frenzy. Couples taking selfies, friends gossiping, strangers swiping on dating apps like their lives depend on it. Everyone is plugged into a constant stream of noise, validation, and distraction. But this man, he's still. He's not lonely, he's not looking, he's not needing, and that, right there, is what makes him dangerous. Society doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't need anything from it. We are told from birth that to be alone is to be broken. Every commercial, every influencer, every platform whispers the same mantra. You need more friends, more followers, more approval. You're not enough as you are. You need connection. You need community. You need someone, but what if that's the biggest lie of all? What if the man sitting alone isn't broken, but free? What if he's not escaping the world but seeing it clearly for the first time? The world calls him antisocial, weird, emotionally unavailable. But the truth is, he terrifies them. Not because he's dangerous in a violent sense, but because he's no longer controllable. He can sit with silence. He can wrestle with his own thoughts. He can look into the mirror of solitude and not flinch. Most people can't do that for 5 minutes without reaching for a screen, but he's not most people. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, knew this. At the height of his power, he sat alone, night after night, writing to himself. Not for glory, but for clarity. He understood that the deepest strength is forged in solitude. Nietzsche knew it too. He wandered the mountains alone, thinking thoughts so dangerous they still echo through the ages. He warned us of the tribe, of how it crushes the individual, how society punishes those who dare to think for themselves. And he was right, because a man who thinks for himself cannot be manipulated. He can't be sold a dream, he can't be guilted into conformity. That's what makes the solitary man a threat to the system. He's proof that you can step outside the machine and survive, even worse, thrive. You see, solitude isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of inner abundance. The man who enjoys his own company has cultivated a life so rich within that he doesn't need noise to fill the silence. While others scroll for distractions, he reflects. While others beg for attention, he sharpens his mind. And this is what society fears most. Because if more people realize that wholeness isn't something you buy or borrow, it's something you build, the entire illusion would collapse. Social media would lose its grip, marketing would fall flat, even relationships would evolve, no longer based on desperation, but on truth. So when you see someone sitting alone, don't pity them. They might just be practicing the most powerful form of rebellion, choosing peace over performance, truth over illusion, solitude over shallow connection. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of danger the world needs right now. And when you stop being predictable, you stop being manageable. This is the root of what makes the solitary man, or woman, so unsettling to the world. They can't be led with bait. They don't respond to shame. They don't fall in line just because everyone else is marching. Why? Because they've done the work. They've sat in silence long enough to hear the truth behind the noise. While the world runs on scripts, moral, social, political, the dangerous loner writes their own. Not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. They've realized that the values handed to them were often designed to serve someone else's purpose. And so, they begin again, brick by brick, building a life, a philosophy, and a code that actually aligns with what they've seen and felt in their own soul. This is the Nietzschean problem, creating your own values in a world that punishes original thought. Nietzsche didn't just warn against conformity, he called it spiritual decay. To live according to someone else's truth is to abandon your own potential. The dangerous loner doesn't just reject that system, they replace it. That's what society truly fears, not the man who isolates, but the one who emerges from isolation with clarity. You've seen this archetype in myth and history. The hermit, the prophet, the outcast who returns from the wilderness, not broken but refined. They're no longer interested in applause. They speak in truths too sharp for polite conversation. They question what others worship. They see through power disguised as morality, and because they've endured solitude, they don't need approval to stand firm. They're dangerous not because they want to hurt the world. They're dangerous because they no longer belong to it. They've transcended the need to fit in. They've looked society in the face and said, "No, thank you." Not in bitterness, but in liberation. They don't hate people. They just refuse to play the game. And what terrifies society most is that, deep down, everyone senses they're right. Because solitude isn't a prison for the dangerous loner. It's a forge. It's where illusion burns away. It's where the noise of the world fades and the voice of truth gets louder. It's where real power is born. Not the kind that needs followers, but the kind that can walk alone, unshaken, unconvinced, and utterly untouchable. 2. Emotional sovereignty. The person who thrives in solitude doesn't let their emotions be dictated by external events or other people's approval. They don't need to be liked to feel okay. They don't need applause to feel worthy. This emotional independence makes them unshakable. When everyone else is panicking, chasing, reacting, they remain still. And in that stillness, they gain power. 3. Intellectual autonomy. They don't outsource their thinking. They don't need an influencer to tell them how to think. They've developed their own lens, their own questions, their own worldview. They don't parrot opinions, they generate them, and because of that, they can't be manipulated by trends, propaganda, or peer pressure. They read Marcus Aurelius not to feel smart, but to feel grounded. They study Nietzsche not to be edgy, but to understand the battlefield of the mind. They think for themselves, and that's a threat. 4. Purpose without permission. The dangerous loner doesn't wait for validation to pursue meaning. They don't need a job title, a relationship, or a following to live with intention. They've defined their purpose internally. They create without applause. They serve without needing thanks. They build without broadcasting it on social media. And because their purpose is rooted in something deeper than approval, it can't be taken from them. That's the final straw for a system that thrives on external control. And that's why the man at the coffee shop, alone with his thoughts, isn't lost. He's found. He's not waiting for someone to complete him. He's not trying to prove anything to anyone. He's not chasing the illusion of more. He's choosing less, but deeper, less noise, less need, less pretending, but deeper thought. Deeper peace, deeper power. That's what makes him dangerous, not because he's a threat to others, but because he's immune to their games. And if you've ever felt like you don't quite belong in a world addicted to attention, dopamine, and distraction, it might be because you were never meant to. You weren't meant to be part of the noise. You were meant to master the silence. That silence, it isn't empty, it's full of truth. And the moment you stop fearing it, you stop being controlled, you start being free, you become the kind of person this world doesn't know how to handle. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly who you were born to be. They'll label your silence as loneliness, your independence as bitterness, and your refusal to conform as rebellion. But what they're really reacting to is their own discomfort, because your existence challenges the fragile scaffolding they've built their lives upon. You, the dangerous one, force them to confront truths they'd rather avoid. You hold up a mirror they never asked for, and in that reflection, they see everything they've compromised for comfort. You become a reminder of what they could be if only they weren't so afraid. That's the burden of walking your own path. You'll be the one at gatherings who doesn't laugh at the cheap jokes, the one who won't flatter someone just to keep peace, the one who sees through virtue signaling, ego games, and shallow connections. You'll watch as people distance themselves, not because they hate you, but because your presence disrupts their illusion. But if you can endure that exile, something rare begins to happen. You grow immune to the weapons used against the masses: guilt, fear, shame, approval, seeking. You become psychologically untouchable. No one can manipulate your emotions if you've already made peace with solitude. No one can hijack your mind if you've already trained it to think freely. No one can sway your soul if you've already anchored it in something real. And that's what makes you dangerous. Not your anger, not your defiance, but your calm, your clarity, your unwillingness to kneel at the altar of conformity. The world teaches us to blend in, to obey, to fear solitude. But solitude, when chosen consciously, isn't isolation. It's sovereignty. So yes, the dangerous person is often alone, not because they're unloved, but because they refuse to love what is false. Not because they're cold, but because warmth without truth feels like poison. Not because they can't belong, but because they won't belong just anywhere. They are the ones who walk through the world untamed, undefended, and unbelievably free. And freedom, in a world addicted to control, is the most dangerous thing of all. You'll realize one day that the deepest peace doesn't come from people clapping for you. It comes from knowing who you are when no one's watching. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to live. And yes, at first, it's disorienting. There's a silence that follows when you no longer post for likes, when you no longer shape your personality for approval, when you stop telling people what they want to hear. That silence isn't emptiness, it's freedom. And that's why society fears the self-sufficient man or woman. Because you can't be sold a dream if you've already built your own. You can't be threatened with rejection if you no longer fear being alone. You can't be seduced by false promises if you've found fulfillment in the present moment. A self-sufficient person doesn't just break the rules of the game, they leave the game entirely. They're immune. Immune to trends, immune to manipulation, immune to emotional blackmail, immune to the addiction of being seen. And this is the modern Stoic, not cold, not indifferent, but deeply anchored, grounded, awake. They walk quietly, but their presence shakes the room, not because they demand attention, but because they no longer need it. They listen more than they speak. They observe more than they perform. They think more than they react. And slowly, the world starts to notice. Some will be drawn to them. Others will feel threatened, but very few will understand, because what they've found, true inner freedom, can't be bought, copied, or borrowed. It has to be built, moment by moment, reflection by reflection, truth by painful truth. So yes, you'll lose people. You'll be called strange, quiet, even arrogant. But in losing the world's approval, you gain something far more valuable. Yourself. And in a world obsessed with image, the person who dares to be real is the rarest and most dangerous of all. ***, find your worth within yourself. The paradox of dangerous solitude. ***, here's the beautiful and terrifying truth. The person who no longer needs others becomes the one others can't help but be drawn to, not because they're trying, not because they're performing, but because their energy is sovereign, whole, complete. This is the paradox of dangerous solitude. When you no longer seek your worth in someone else's gaze, when you stop chasing applause to feel alive, when you stand in your own presence and feel full, that's when everything changes. You become magnetic, not because you're needy, but because you're free. People are drawn to those who don't demand, to those who carry peace in their bones. to those who love without attachment, who walk away without bitterness, who offer without expectation. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. You're not doing it to attract anyone, that's the key. You're doing it because it's the right way to live. Everything else, connection, love, respect, admiration, that becomes a bonus, not the mission. Because when you no longer need relationships, they finally become real. You love from abundance, not emptiness. You work from purpose, not pressure. You create from flow, not fear. And yes, your friendships deepen. Not because you're clinging to them, but because they're chosen, voluntary, sacred. Your work sharpens because you're no longer begging for approval. You're serving something deeper. Your life quiets. It sharpens. It becomes yours again. And that's when something strange happens. People who once overlooked you start paying attention. People who tried to control you realize they can't. People who lived in noise are drawn to your silence. Why? Because solitude is power, and sovereignty is seductive, and a person who cannot be controlled, cannot be ignored. The call to dangerous living So, here's the challenge. Become dangerous. Not cruel, not cold, but untouchable by the trivial games the world plays. Be dangerous because you can think for yourself. Be dangerous because you've faced your fears and came out whole. Be dangerous because your values are your own, not borrowed, not bought. A man or woman who can sit in a room alone and feel complete is a threat to every system built on fear, insecurity, and codependence. The world doesn't need more followers. It needs more warriors of solitude. It needs more people who don't beg for truth, but embody it. More people who won't be manipulated by guilt, flattery, or loneliness. It needs you. So if these words stirred something in you, if they made you sit up straighter, breathe a little deeper, then share this. Because someone you know has forgotten their worth, and it might just be this truth, this fire that wakes them back up. You know who they are, the quiet ones, the thinkers, the ones who feel too deeply and question too much. And if you're still here, if this message found you, you're one of them too. But listen, the algorithm doesn't reward truth unless you tell it what matters. So if this hits something real in you, don't just scroll. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one belief you've been carrying that you never actually chose for yourself? What's one place in your life where you've been chasing validation instead of building self-respect? This isn't just engagement, it's rebellion. Because when you speak your truth, even in a comment section, you help rewrite the script for someone else too. And remember this, in a world addicted to applause, the rarest soul is the one who can walk in silence and still feel whole. In a society built to keep you distracted, disconnected, and dependent, the most radical act is to learn how to stand alone. So choose your solitude, sharpen your soul, and whatever you do, stay dangerous, my friends. Not because the world wants you to, but because it doesn't know what to do with someone it can't control.